Hey everyone, we're happy you could join us for today's session, Testing is Not a 9-to-5 Job, with Industry Executive Mike Lyles. We are thrilled to have Mike as a guest speaker because he's best suited to talk about how to become the tester managers want to hire. And this is why. Mike is a seasoned executive with over 20 years of IT experience managing QA teams for Fortune 50 companies and has been successful in career development, team building, coaching, and mentoring of IT and QA professionals. Mike has experience in various IT leadership roles, including software development, program management, office, and software testing, and has led various teams within testing organizations, including functional testing, test environments, software configuration management, test data management, performance testing, test automation, and service virtualization. So without further ado, I think that we will let Mike speak now. Mike, the stage is yours.
And thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited to share with you guys my presentation that it's kind of gone around a couple of places with it, and testing is not a 9-to-5 job, and we're going to talk about that some today. A little bit about me. Adi is kind of given a lot of information to start with. I don't want to add to this much longer and belabor it, but I do have several years of experience both in development, project management office. Worked as a development manager, and then also had the pleasure of being able to work in so many different testing opportunities and different facets of testing. Bottom left corner, please look, if you're on Twitter, please follow me. I am a narcissist and I do love followers, but also that'll become important down the road as you see some of the slides to be a follower of me, and that'll help out, and also LinkedIn as well. I do have a motivational book coming out, and this year, and I've said that for a couple of years, but this is the year. It's called The Drive-Thru is Not Always Faster. If you see me standing in that window, everyone can understand how difficult it is to get someone at a fast food restaurant to allow you to stand in their window. And I won't go into details of how long that took to get someone to let me do that. But the book will have that as one of the pictures in it. And maybe we can talk about that later on in another webinar as well. So our agenda for today, what is a 9-to-5 tester? I want to talk about testing everywhere and why that it's important to be a tester that looks at things beyond just your day-to-day job. We're going to talk about some experiences that the testing community has given me, and I've got a survey that I've done with over 267 people total that have really given a lot of inputs to some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, because I wanted to hear from the community on what they see and ask some questions as part of that survey, which I think is going to be very insightful to you. And then also just thinking beyond the 9-to-5, thinking about beyond your day job and what you do during the day. So as I mentioned, I've got a book coming out that speaks to motivation, leadership, how to be a motivational and strategic person that thinks about things from a leadership perspective, and how to hopefully this book will change people's lives, I would expect. But when I started thinking about how do I combine that passion as one of the things I like to do with testing, how would that look if we were to take motivational books like The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell? Would it become The 360-Degree Tester? And if we looked at The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, it would become The 7 Highly Effective Testers. And Good to Great, very popular book, would become Good to Break, if you want to think about that from a testing standpoint. A couple of more start with why would be start with why not. The 1-Minute Manager, which I think everyone in your development teams and any teams that works with you as a tester would love to make sure that you read the 1-Minute Tester. And last but not least is Never Wrestle with a Pig. And I don't think that one needs any changes at all. I think that one fits right in with our day-to-day work and some of the things we have to deal with as testers. So one of the things that we mentioned in the emails and the promotion for this webinar was that what does people look for when you're hiring testers? And I've been hiring people in all sorts of positions and all sorts of jobs for the last 20 years, 25 years. And I've been doing this longer than some of you have probably been alive. And one of the things that we look at when we think about testing, and one of the things that I try to do with folks when I'm thinking about what type of testers that I want, it takes me back to the 9 to 5 testers, and whether you're a 9 to 5 tester or you're someone that thinks beyond that. So hopefully I'm piquing your interest into what is a 9 to 5 tester and what is a someone that's not a 9 to 5 tester. And we're going to talk about that some today and in detail. The first question for you guys is, do you love your job? Now, when I did this as a keynote a couple of weeks ago in North Carolina, the one thing that I asked was a room full of almost 500 people, do you love your job? And a lot of people raised their hands, but there were some people in that room that didn't raise their hands. And my challenge to you is, what can you do to make yourself love your job? You spend a third of your life working during your working years. And what can you do to make yourself love your job? Or what things can you do that will ensure that you love what you do in your job? The next question is, do you want to get better? Now, even the folks that didn't raise their hand that they love their job in my keynote said, yes, I definitely want to get better. And who doesn't want to do that? Why would we not want to be better? And so when you think about how do you get better, what I want to share with you today and what I want you to take from this presentation today is, how do I make myself more marketable? If I want to move out and take a new career on, I want to move into a new testing role, or I want to be someone that is marketable and that is highly attractive to recruiters and folks that are looking for testers, what can I do to be better? Now, I can take it offline and tell you all different ways to be better from a leadership perspective or a personal goals perspective. But today we're going to talk about how do you get better as a tester. The one thing that got me started on this was the Olympics a couple of years ago. My whole plan and my whole idea for these slides and this presentation all started when I looked at Michael Phelps. And for those of you, I think anyone, even from any country, it doesn't even have to be the United States. If you're watching the Olympics and you're seeing what's going on in the Olympics a couple of years ago, Michael Phelps won more gold medals in his career than anyone in the history of Olympics. And I started thinking about that. And I said to myself, we see Michael Phelps for a couple of weeks, maybe a month total in what he does in the Olympics. But what we don't see is all the things that Michael Phelps was doing behind the scenes. The hours and hours he spent at the pool, the hours he spent in the weight room working out, the meals that he ate, and the diet that he took on to try to make sure that he studied and learned everything he could about swimming so that he would be the best swimmer to ever embrace the Olympics. Obviously, he did some things that he probably wasn't happy for either, but we're going to focus on the positives today. And the thing that I think that we want to talk about today is, how do you set yourself up so that when you're going to work, people see all the things that you're doing and the testing that you're doing and the role that you play, whether or not they see all of the work that you're doing behind the scenes, the extra work, the add-ons and the additional stuff that you're doing, they at least see the results of what you're doing in your job day to day. One last note on Michael Phelps is, I thought it was very interesting with his quote that says, I always thought it would be neat to make the Olympic team. And I've always said, you never know what you're capable of until you surround yourself with other great testers. The only thing that Phelps wanted to do was to be part of the Olympic team. He wasn't thinking about, I'm going to win 20, 30 Olympic medals, gold medals, or that I want to be remembered as the best that ever did the job or ever did the sport. All he wanted to do was just make the Olympics. And your goal today is, if you don't feel like that you're a world-class Olympic tester, if that ever was a term, or that you're doing excellent work and that you can't be compared to anyone because you're the best that does your job, just think the first step is to try to get yourself on the team. And you may say to me, I've got people that I work with and nobody wants to go to this webinar that Mike Lyles is doing. And nobody wants to go to conferences and go to training and learn new things and do their craft. They want to just go to work every day, punch in, do their job, punch out, go home. And my challenge to you and the thing we're going to talk about today is that there are things you can do. It doesn't have to just be what you do at work. And if everybody in your office doesn't feel the same way as you, you don't have to sit in that rut and do the same thing. You can be above that and do things when you're not at work that will help you grow. So this is my dad, and this is me, the guy with the hat on, my brother as well. My mom made those pants for me. I do not have them still, and I didn't wear them very long back then. Also a note there is my dad taught me how to wear a hat, which obviously was wrong back then. But my dad was a factory worker, and he worked in a factory for 3 decades, and he did a great job. And I can't thank him enough for what he did to support my family and the things he did in his factory work. But my dad went to a factory every time and he punched in, he did his job, and he did it well. He got many awards for doing what he did at the factory, but when he punched out, he went home. And he didn't go home and study how to be a better factory worker. And he didn't go home and study how to do his job better. Now, of course, they sent him to training courses and taught him how to be uh, a machinist and to run the factory machines that he ran. And he had some leadership roles in his factory, but he didn't have to study it, and he didn't have to do things beyond just his day-to-day task to be good at what he was doing. Unfortunately, we don't have that privilege in the testing world. Now, I'm sure that there are some people, natural-born testers, who can do it without the extra work. But I guarantee you that when you think about 9 to 5, somebody that just does testing only in the office, only when they're forced to do it, so to speak, in their job, versus someone who's a professional tester. Now, I'm not calling you a non-professional tester if you're not studying beyond your day-to-day. But my challenge to you is there are more things you can do. There are things you can do after work that will help you be and grow as a tester. There's a quote that I love that says, "You never realize how boring your life is until someone asks you what you like to do for fun." Now, if you're in testing and you talk to your family members that don't understand IT or testing, you know what I'm talking about. It's very difficult sometimes to explain what you do. I used to work for a hardware company, and I've had folks in my families that thought that I was testing the actual hammers, nails, saws, and the other tools at the hardware company that I worked at. But sometimes it does get a little boring to talk about what you do, but you can excite people by talking to others about how you do your job and by speaking to people that actually do the same job as you and reaching out to the community. We're going to talk about some of that today as well. I want to be really quick before we go any further that I don't want you to confuse this 9 to 5 versus a professional tester with being a workaholic. Zig Ziglar, great motivational speaker, said, "No one ever said on their deathbed, I wish I had worked in the office more." I'm not asking you to work 70 or 80 hours in your job. In fact, I'm asking the contrary to that. And that is that I would like for you to think about, I go and I do my job. I punch in, I do my work, and I know punching in, I keep saying that there's no actual punches anymore. But I check into my job in the morning and I do my job. And I complete my job on time and I leave. I'm asking you to think beyond what you do after you're working, what you do in the evenings, what do you do on the weekends, what do you do on your time off. I'm not asking you to work all the time, I'm not asking you to truly study testing all the time, but if you want to grow in your career, I'm telling you there are things that you can do beyond just going to the office and testing every day that can make you a better tester and more marketable, more sought after, and hiring managers, recruiters, and future jobs that you may have and growth in your career will depend on how well you do this. Now, if I was in a group of people right now, I would ask you, did you start your career as a tester? And if I could get everybody to raise your hands, and don't click raise your hands, it will shut down the system today if I do that. But I would ask, if we're looking around all the folks on the webinar and you're a tester, how many of you started as a tester? And I found that I've spoke to large groups of people on this topic. Many people have not started as a tester. And it's okay that you didn't. In fact, when I was in 6th grade, I got my certificate of computer science on an Apple IIe computer in 1983. You can figure out how old I am now. But I said, I'm going to be a programmer for the rest of my life. That changed. I did start out as a programmer, and I did it for some time. But you are going places. And if you love your job and you want to grow, if you're not a tester, I want to entice you to be a tester after this webinar. If you are a tester, I want to entice you to do so much more that everybody starts seeing what you're doing. Steve Jobs once said that we don't always connect the dots. We actually don't connect the dots forward. We always connect them backwards. And we realize where we are now because of what has happened in our past. So if you're not a tester, there's a chance for you. And if you are a tester, we're going to talk about some things you can do beyond that. Now, there's always a question that I ask folks is, are you born with it? Are you a born tester? You look at kids today, anyone that has children has understood the things that I've understood by having children in my life and 2 kids, is that they are going to test everything from the time they open their eyes until the time they go to sleep. They will eat things they shouldn't eat. They will put their hands on a burner and burn themselves. They will touch things they shouldn't touch. They will walk into staircases or down staircases. And I know you're asking yourself, what kind of parent are you? You've got some pretty bad situations. But I tell you, kids are natural born testers because they start thinking about, how do I explore things? And they don't have a script. They don't have test cases. They don't have requirements documentation. They just figure it out. And we're going to talk about some of that today as well. They just figure it out by exploring the things that are in their lives, and they touch things and feel things and eat things and do all kinds of things. So we'll talk some more about that. Now, going back to my book title, The Drive-Thru is Not Always Faster. One of the things that I did many years and years, for those of you that know me, of fast food eating to and from work and any other time I can get it, is I sit in drive-thru windows and I watched. And I'm sitting in the line to get to the drive-thru window, and I realized that sometimes people will get out of their cars, go into the restaurant, get their food, leave the restaurant. And as they're coming out of the restaurant, I'm sitting there still in line, haven't even got up to make my order. And it got me thinking. And that's how I come up with the idea for the book. And that's how I'm using this for many life situations, including testing. And that is, we get caught into doing things a certain way because we think it's faster and we think it's the right way. You know, sometimes you think that the drive-thru window is supposed to be faster. I shared my drive-thru story with someone at a drive-thru once, and the drive-thru person obviously was a little offended by that. And their statement to me was, well, it may not be faster, but it is convenient. They were absolutely right. And thank you for that material because I'm using it now. Don't just do what you do in your job every day because it's convenient. Don't follow the same process that we've been following for years just because it's convenient. And don't take the easy way out. Sometimes there's a better, faster, easier way, and it may be a way that no one has ever thought of other than you. Now, thinking about this, it got me thinking about there are worse things than we've always done it this way. You hear people say that all the time. I've worked for companies that say, you know, it's great that you've got these ideas. It's really cool that you go to webinars and conferences and you come back with some great ideas. But you know what? We've always done it this way. And if everybody jumped off the Empire State Building, would you do it too? And, you know, I challenge you to think outside of the box there and not do it because everybody's done it this way. But worse than we've always done it this way is everybody is doing it this way. Now, as I start telling you in the following slides that you can do this to learn from other people and you can do that to learn from other people. My challenge to you is sometimes you can take bits and pieces from everybody that you come in contact with in the testing world and the development world and all of IT and the business. And you can come up with some creative ways that are just specific to you. And how do you do that? And don't just get yourself caught up in, well, I hear so many people doing this and doing it this way, so I'm going to follow it. It doesn't have to be viral for you to do something in testing. You can be different. One of my quotes is a good way to learn how to deal with something is to listen to those that have already been through it themselves. And I think that, it does sound a little contradictory to what I just said, but as I mentioned, you need to look at how people are resolving issues in their workday, how they're solving problems, and take what you need in your career and your testing experience to solve the same problems. Bits and pieces from one person and another person might give you the best solution for what you're doing. And the one thing that I think people fail to do also is lots of times we only look at lessons learned and from bad experiences or things that broke or things that didn't work correctly. Also take time to look at successes and understand how something was successful and learn from that as well. So one of the things that I did, as I mentioned earlier, is we did a survey with over 270 people. And as part of that survey, I asked a few questions and I wanted to find out, what do testers deal with on a day-to-day basis? What are some of the things that you have to resolve? And one of the things that I first asked was, I want to know how many hours you spend in meetings. I hear a lot of people talk about, yeah, I'm in testing, but I spend a lot of hours in meetings. And what came up from this was 49%, over 49% of the people that responded said they spend over 5 hours in meetings every week. 21% of those said that they spend over 10 hours in meetings every week, which led me to my next question. How many hours per week do you spend in requirements and project reviews? Because I wanted to break it down and think about how many hours are they spending in meetings? That's one thing, but are these meetings even related to what they're doing in their testing role? And as you can see, 72% of the folks said they spent less than 5 hours, which is good. We did have one person, 6 people actually, that said they spent more than 20 hours in requirements and project reviews. And these are testers. So I'm really curious how their companies operate, because I think you do need time to understand the requirements. You do need to understand what the project is going to deliver. It's another webinar that I'd have to present on whether or not you actually need requirements to do your job. But you do need to be able to understand what the project is doing. But I'm not really sure you need to spend more than 20 hours a week doing that. The last question I had on that related for the hours in meetings was how many hours per week are you spending in company functions that is not related to testing at all? We got 7 people that said they spent more than 20 hours in company functions not related to testing. My question to those folks is, are you a tester? Or are you in the testing role? And these were testers that answered the questions. I feel sorry for those folks. If you're in that situation, please email me. Please reach out to me. I want to understand what you're doing, that you're spending so much time working on things not related to testing. There's so many things that testers need to do, and the main one is testing. If you're spending time in meetings, that's a big challenge. And the last survey question that I had that I was looking at was, what do you do outside of work that is testing activities? I had 87% of the people said they read blogs, and these were not and or. Everybody could say I read blogs and I look at social media. So we had 87% that reads blogs. 55% said they had discussions on social media. So they're out there on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and communicating with other testers. And I think that's a really good place to do that. 41% said they attended testing conferences. 41% also said that they take testing training courses. That was very interesting as well. 43% said they attend meetups. And I think meetups is a very big opportunity for folks. There's usually meetups. If you go to meetup.com, you can find a local meetup. Usually there's a testing meetup nearby. I just spoke at one in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday. And so it's a really great opportunity to meet people in your community on a monthly basis or a weekly, bi-weekly basis to talk about testing and what they're experiencing. 74% of folks said that they read articles and books on testing, and 19% said they do crowd testing, which I think is an excellent way to help yourself as a tester. If you've not used companies like UTest, Applause, and looking at how some companies will actually pay these companies to reach out to total strangers. And if you're part of the crowd testing effort, you might get asked to test this website this weekend. And so they have 1,000 or 10,000 people across the country testing this website for one of their clients. And you might get paid a little bit for doing that, or get some kind of incentive to do that. And plus, it gives you an opportunity to show how you test and do some testing. 17% said other. My input and suggestion for anyone that ever wants to do a survey is don't give people an option to put other, because at least 17% in this case will fill it out. But one thing that I did do is ask anyone that answered other to please explain to me what that other was. And a couple of those were folks talked about learning development skills and learning how to increase their test automation skills. Some said they watched videos and listened to podcasts, webinars like we're doing today. Some used mentoring. And I'm assuming the person that said this meant both being a mentor as well as being mentored, because I have found every time that I've gone into an effort to be a mentor, I have become the student as much as I've become the teacher, because I learned so much from people by helping them and being in a mentoring situation with them. Others was face-to-face at local events, practicing testing on self-made exercises. I've done that before. I test a lot of things. And then mobile games. The last four here was photography. I took a photography course years ago, and I do understand the complexity of being a photographer. And I guarantee you that there's many things you can learn about testing by trying to get the lighting adjusted correctly when you're manually adjusting photography. Someone said job searching, which I thought was entertaining, and I hope you're laughing as you're listening to this, because I laughed at it at first myself, but then after I started thinking, when you look at job searches and you look at what people are asking for, you start learning what recruiters are looking for, what type of skills they're looking for, and it'll help you grow as you look at job postings. Even if you're not looking for a job, look at the job postings for testers and see what people are looking for today. Someone said non-testing books and watching videos to find a testing relation. I'm well known for watching movies that are supposed to take place in older dates. Like if a TV show is set in the 1980s, like in America, there's a TV show called The Goldbergs, and it's all taking place in the 1980s, so to speak. And I look for them to be walking in the street and see if I find a car that is from the 2000s, or I find something that's out of place and is actually from current day, but they've accidentally left it in there. I do try to look for things like that. And then one person said they test the quality of whiskeys, which I guess that would work for a short period of time, but pretty soon I'm sure it would be very hard for you to remember what you're testing if you test that too long. Conference numbers are growing. We do hear, and I work with a couple of conferences, or one conference in particular. But what I'm finding is that conference numbers do seem to grow, and I think people are starting to see the value. Employers are starting to see the value of having people go to conferences, because conferences are more focused now on content and making sure that we have the right speakers. The one that I support and help. If you want to hear more about it, reach out to me. I'm glad to tell you about it. But the one that I support, we pride ourselves on selecting the right people to speak at this conference and the right topics that are relevant to the current date. Blogs and articles. If you're writing a blog or an article today, keep it up. Most of the people that I talk to that are doing blogs and articles, they will say that, well, I started a blog years ago and I've just not kept it up to date. And, you know, don't let it die. Even if all you can do is write a paragraph or a short update about your blog, people are listening to you, and you'll be so surprised at how many people are actually reading what you do. Tell them something, make it inspiring, even if it's only a paragraph or a sentence. People are watching what you do and what you say out there, and make sure you keep a focus on that. A lot of times I've seen people write their experience for this week. Hey, I had this problem. Here's how I dealt with it. And they get a lot of feedback from people saying, you know what, here's how I dealt with it. And you start making friends, and it's a good thing to make friends out there. I asked folks, how do you learn testing at work? Some of the inputs that I got back from this was they look at multiple domains. A lot of folks are working for companies where their company has different divisions. If you're in a retail environment, you may have store systems and logistics and merchandising, marketing, and inventory. And if you're working just in one group, get yourself in position to learn something from a different group. Think about technologies. A lot of folks talking about how that they keep researching new technologies. My challenge to you, to make yourself marketable, to make yourself sought after, is to make sure you stay up to date with what things are changing in the world, what tools are changing in the world, and what products and testing processes. Just imagine 30 years ago, nobody was talking about testing mobile or .com sites because they didn't exist. Now we do. And so while your simple core practice of testing may be the same, the way you're testing things and the tools we're using and the things we're doing to make that happen is changing. Learning development practices, the only challenge I have for that person that's looking at learning development practices is to make sure you don't tell the developer their baby is ugly. Because if you tell them their code is really, really bad, the best way to work with someone in development is to explain to them, here's what I found. I feel your pain. I want to help you solve this. We're in this together. Understanding the customer views of software. I think that's a really big thing for testers. Lots of times we get ourselves caught up in reviewing requirements documents, writing test cases, and executing those test cases and completing it. But really, to be a great tester, you need to understand how the user is going to use the product. And that may not always be in a requirements document. How are they going to look at the product and use that product day after day? What things would they like to see? What things make them happy? Understanding what the customer wants is critical to being a great tester. And that leads right into exploratory testing. Exploratory testing, scriptless. I don't write 10 steps and execute those 10 steps and say I'm good. Thinking about, what do I do? What if I press this button? And then when I press that button, based on what happens, what do I do next? And it's kind of fun and it's adventurous. A lot of us have done Mad Lib books years ago. And if you're not familiar with Mad Libs, you'll read through this one chapter of the book and it'll say, go to page 48, and you'll go to page 48. Once you get there, you read this and it said, okay, if you want to do this, go to page 20. If you want to do that, go to page 50. And so you're taking decisions based on the context of where you're at the moment and what decisions you're making. As testers, that's really critical to being an excellent tester. Exploratory testing, context-driven testing, I think is something that has to be built into your DNA so that you can be a better tester. Mention pair testing, thinking about development practices, looking at pairing with developers. It's really critical, especially in the agile environments, making sure any environment really, but agile more importantly, because of the speed of your sprints, thinking about how that you would make sure that you as a tester integrate with the developer and they integrate with you. They learn a little bit about what you're doing and you learn a little bit about what they're doing. And then in-house brown bag lunches. Lots of times people will say, you know what, I got so many things I have to do after work. I have kids, I have to take them places and do things with them. Maybe in work, learning from others at work, but taking away from the day job and actually doing it during lunch, bringing in a bag lunch. I ask people this a lot on security testing. And a lot of times people will say, well, our group doesn't do security. And I bet you're listening to this saying, well, I'm in testing. And unless you are just a security tester and that's what you do day to day, you're probably not taking on security as far as part of your testing efforts. Whether or not your company's doing it, I would study it. I would learn it. Look at what the world is doing around security. We have breaches all the time. We have issues all the time. We have attacks. We have all kinds of things, hacking incidents happening all around us. The more you learn about security testing, the more you're going to be prepared when your company says, we're going to start it today, or you're going to do it today. They may be doing it, but just not with you. I mentioned a little bit about junior and entry level testers. I mentioned about the student becoming the teacher becoming the student. The more you work with people, share your story, the more people will work with you, and you can learn from them as well. And the last one was making testing fun. Not to be confused with make fun of testing, which some people like to do as well. Now I'm going to skip through. I'm sorry, not forward. I'm just going to show a couple of things here because these were things that people wanted to change if they could change one thing. And of course, I've got 10 things here. But we looked at the one thing, the top 10 things that I got from folks that they would change if they could change one thing. Process improvement, being more creative in testing. Stopping project teams from minimizing testing hours. We're not going to solve that problem with this webinar, and you may not solve this problem in your lifetime, but I think you have to help grow your influence in the organization and be able to lead upward, sideways, and around, all around, to make sure that people understand that testing needs the hours that we estimate, and that's what we're going to do. Learning coding, we mentioned before, including testing in the whole SDLC. One of the things I challenge folks that work with me in testing is challenge the testing from the point you understand what the requirement is. If someone says this system must be fast, how do you test fast? Now, unless they tell me what fast means, I don't know. Fast to you may not be the same as fast to me. I might think it's slow. So we need to understand that as we test the requirements and test the conditions of the product, we need to be specific, and being part of those early stages of the software development lifecycle is very critical. Mentorship and coaching programs, meeting the customers, we talked about that. Flexibility in working hours. I'm fortunate to work for a company that allows a lot of flexibility in that, but we still get the job done. That's the focus, is getting the job done. And I think if you're in a position, in a leadership position, where you can allow your folks to work more flexible, but still get the job done, you'll see an increase in productivity. Changing the mindset of non-testing teams about testing importance. That is a webinar in itself, but there are things you can do. And I would challenge each of you, and just one quick note, if you're being asked by your organization, why is testing needed? Why does it take so much time? Why does it cost so much? We need to figure out a way to reduce it or remove it from our organization. Don't tell them that you just want to be loved. Don't just tell them that you deserve to be loved and that testing is critical and that they need to do it. Show them why that what you're doing, if you didn't do your job, it would really hurt the organization, and it would really hurt the product's chance and the risk of those products. Testers influence quality. We do not own quality. If you're being told that you own quality in your organization, please change that mindset of the person that's telling you that, and yourself, because we do not own quality. Everyone in the organization owns quality. And then remove quotas from testing. I think a lot of times we get caught up around we get wrapped around numbers, and we look at, okay, how many test cases did I run? How many did we complete? So many metrics cause us so many problems. Does it matter how many test cases passed? Because if I haven't ran the critical test cases, does that really tell me the health of the project? Again, another webinar that I could do on just talking about telling a story. Let metrics tell a story, not a number. And the big thing that come from folks was minimize meetings. We saw that on some of the slides. We saw it in the surveys. And minimizing meetings. I've been in organizations that have a meeting to talk about how many meetings we want to have and when we want to have meetings. Please don't get caught up in that. If you have the opportunity, find ways to tell folks that, am I needed in this meeting? Is there an agenda for the meeting? Am I participating in this meeting? And then go from there. You may not be able to get out of them, but I bet you can reduce them if you really are critical about what meetings you're having and how you can cut them down. Now, no test team ever woke up one day and said, we're going to fail. Nobody ever did. And I watched a TEDx presentation not long ago. It was called How Will You Measure Your Life? And the one thing that this guy was talking about was it sometimes takes us 20 years to see the results of what we're doing. Sometimes we don't see it happening before us. Parents will tell you sometimes that usually the kids are grown before I realize if I did a good job as a parent. And you think about companies like Blockbuster Video that I grew up with, they just closed their last store, the last open store a couple of months ago. And nobody would have ever thought years ago that would ever happen. We would have thought that video stores would be open forever. And now my children cannot even tell you what a VHS tape is. And many of you on this webinar probably don't know as well. But life changes, and as things change, don't set yourself up to fail. Don't assume that what's working today for you is going to work every day, tomorrow, next week, next month. Keep growing, keep learning, keep studying beyond what you do day to day. Keep making yourself more marketable out there in the community. Michael Bolton, one of my favorite testers in the testing community, one of the leaders out there, had a quote that says, as testers, one of our most important jobs is to reveal problems that threaten the value of the product and the on-time successful completion of the project at every level of granularity. As testers, we're investigative reporters. We get so wrapped up in how many defects we found, how much have we tested. Our job is not just to find defects. If you're a tester and you think your job is just to find defects, change that mindset. You're there to investigate and report what you're finding. And one of the jobs that I love the most is to ask people, why is this requirement here? Why is this? What is the purpose of this requirement? And sometimes when you ask that question to your stakeholders, I've had them come back to me and say, I don't even remember that as a requirement. I don't even remember why I want that there. You save time, you save the effort of your organization to deliver something that the stakeholder doesn't even use or want anymore. Always ask questions. We have a new driver on the road. My son, Winston, he is 15 and he just got his learner's permit. This is him in the seat of my car for the first time. And the one thing I'll tell you quickly is that no matter how well he did in his training to get his driver's permit, no matter how well he passed the test, he would never experience all the things that occur in real life. Having a license, like any other training or certification or permit, does not make you a good driver. You have to understand that. Certifications, trainings, degrees might say that I've learned what testing is, I've learned what my craft is, but it doesn't ensure that you are good at it. My son is learning right now that sometimes you have to watch, even though it's supposed to be that someone's going to take the right turn and someone's not going to come down your lane or drive with their lights turned off. He's having to learn the hard way that there are many situations that you don't plan for when you wake up in the morning and you have to deal with. I was at a conference recently, and I had this slide up, and it was look under your seat for your number. And I had 470 people standing up, looking under their seat, ready to see what number there was. They were ready to win something. And I stopped them before everybody got stood up. And I said, why did you do that? Why just because I'm a keynote standing on the stage? I'm a guy that's got 20 years of experience, 25 years of experience, and I'm standing in front of you. Why do you have that so much respect for me that you believe that you should just listen to me? And the purpose for this exercise was to make sure that people understand you want to get in your organization so much leverage and so much respect from those others that are not in testing that when you say this is a high risk product and I don't want to deliver it, they will say they don't want to deliver it. Let's go back and look at what needs to be done to deliver it. Make sure that you ask the questions. Make sure that you show people that you're involved and you earn the respect of your organization. We all have 24-hour days. And when you look at it, 8 of those hours are sleeping, 9 of those hours are working. You only have 7 hours max, and that's not counting driving to work, taking the kids wherever they need to go, meeting friends, meeting family. Your time is short, but we all have 24-hour days. And when you take away what you do day to day, you're left with time, and what you do with that time is very critical. I'm going to skip through here, but there are things that I watch. I'm addicted to TV. That's my biggest fail. And I'm asking you, don't let things like these TV shows. The term binge watching was made for me, and people that release whole seasons of TV shows kill me because I'll spend the whole weekend watching all the whole season. And I find myself watching TV shows like Game of Thrones. I watched 7 seasons in a couple of weeks because I heard it was great, and I finally decided to do it. And my challenge to you there is don't get so caught up in doing things that are not going to do anything at all for your career. Enjoy these shows, enjoy what you do externally, but make time in what those, when you looked at the 24 hours, you got 7 hours left, make time to fill in with more learning on testing. A challenge to everyone is have an opinion. Make sure that you don't make it personal. Don't be offensive about it, but just because you're not in a management position, if you're not, doesn't mean you can't lead. You can lead up, down, left, and right just by showing your opinion. Be social. One of the things I like to do, and I'm presenting this presentation, is to ask people how many introverts do I have in the room, and they always raise their hand, which makes me laugh. But get social. Get out there. Understand what people are doing out in social media. If you're not on Twitter, please get on Twitter. Please follow me at Mike Lyles. Like I said, I'm narcissistic and I love followers. But get out there and you'll hear people talking about testing all day, all night, 24 hours a day. You can learn from what other people are doing just by being part of the program. If you do follow me on Twitter at Mike Lyles, I will add you to my testing list if you somehow telling me you're with testing. But if you're not and you want to see, there's the twitter.com Mike Lyles list. You can take that link and go directly to it. But there's over 1,200 people in there, and it's growing every day. And what we're trying to do with this is share different, there's so much going on Twitter and so many people tweeting. If you have a filtered list that you can look at, that's really helpful. Study the writings of other leaders. I have a link on my blog site, and you will need this, wordpress.com. It's called Testapedia. And if you go out there, I have several links, and I've compiled years of links and websites and blogs that I've compiled over the years that I look at and have people to review. And my note there is that I'm working on it. We're updating it, and you'll see more. What you see there is a couple of years old. I'm getting it updated, so you should be able to see some new sites to follow. Let's skip through testing all the time. I'm running short, but one of the things I asked the group is to test a TV controller. And if I were to tell you to test a TV controller, think for just a second how you would test it and what you would think about. Now, there are many things you can test, but would you test to make sure there was service connected to the TV? Does that matter in testing a controller? Are there batteries in the controller? Is the TV plugged into power? Is the controller for this specific TV? Just having a controller doesn't always mean it's the right one. Now, I tell you this, it's not okay to test everything. When I tell you test everything, sometimes I saw this sign at a conference in Canada, says jumping an elevator will cause entrapment. Trust me, if you do it, it will. And you don't always need a positive reinforcement of something that needs to be tested like that. I mentioned share your story, and I challenge everyone to please do that. Please get involved with blogs, interact with other people, join webinars, and most importantly here with mentors. I'm wondering how many of you on this webinar today are like the 267 people, which 243 of those 267, 91% said they did not have a mentor. Find a mentor. Don't think that you can only have one. You might have a mentor who helps you with exercise and health and other things. And you may have another mentor that helps you with testing and another mentor that helps you with career growth in other areas and some things you want to do. And they don't have to teach you every day and every week. You can go with having a mentor for multiple things and only meeting with them once a month, but just find someone that knows more than you know about something and learn from them. I'm skipping that slide on how they do that. Your love makes me strong, your hate makes me unstoppable. I love this quote. I would change the word hate if I had made this slide, but I stole this picture. But as you leave this webinar and you go back to work today, or you go back to your job in the morning, and you say, I heard a really great webinar. I'm really fired up. I want to change the world. Somebody at work's going to say, that's fine. That's great. Just get back to your job. Just do what you were supposed to do. Don't let that beat you down. Don't let negativity and disapproval keep you from pushing forward. Don't let anyone push you from being the best you can be, and let that drive you. Negativity, let it drive you to be stronger. People know you for what you've done, not for what you plan to do. So what do you plan to do? What do you hope to have achieved in 20 years from now? Are your goals in your current job aligned with what you want to do in your work? Are you doing today what you think you'll be proud of 20 years from now? If you could look ahead 10, 20, 30 years, are you doing those things that will make you be really great at what, and you're going to look back, in your retirement years at the end of your life and say, I did some really great things. Make sure you're doing that today. Next to last slide is, if you want to see growth in your career, help someone else grow theirs. I've learned so much by helping others. And, sometimes you ask people, what do you do? Ask them why they do it. You'll get a really strange look at first when you ask somebody, hey, what do you do? And they're like, here's what I do. Ask them why. And sometimes they can't tell you, but that's okay. It'll make them start thinking about why. I'm challenging you today. Why do you do what you do? You're at work today. You're at home tonight. Whatever you're doing, why are you doing what you do? Are you in the right place? And do you want to grow? Last but not least, you don't have to be a Sheryl Sandberg, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, all these great people, Bill Gates, that have changed the world. You can change the world right where you are today, doing exactly what you're doing. But what you're doing is great. So don't forget, everything you do, people are watching you, and you can impact those people. So make sure that you ensure that you have the potential to change the world, and that you take that potential and you grow with it. And that, Adi, is the end of my slides.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mike. I know that we are running a bit late, but I will take questions because we had a lot of them. So if you need to leave, you can listen to the full recording, which will be sent to you on Monday. But if you can stay, that will be fantastic. One word to our attendees. I saw all the comments that you sent asking me to tell Mike how great the presentation was, and thank you for doing it. And I promise that I'm going to send him each and every comment personally after the session. So just so you know that everything you write, Mike will see it and get to it. So first of all, I just wanted to say that we had a lot of questions about people asking for additional resources about crowd testing, about security testing. They wanted to know where they can find more resources and how do they know if those resources are good, are reliable. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, for the crowdsourcing, I need to one thing that I will guarantee folks, I will submit a blog by the first of this next week. with some links for other crowdsourcing and secure. And as far as security testing, I will get some links out there for that. So watch my blog for that. You can get that from mikewlyles.com. But for crowdsourcing, I have used utest.com. It's the letter U, TEST.com. It's one of the popular ones through the years, and a lot of people that have done crowdsource or crowd testing have used that for the testing that they're doing. So that's a very popular one. And I'll research and find a couple of others because I know that there are several out there now, and it's a growing trend that a lot of companies are supporting that and providing that service to organizations that want to reach out beyond their organization and not necessarily use a consultant or bring in new employees or new contractors to work with them, just temporarily use people that are just out there. And so it's a big opportunity. I commit to having a blog. So if you follow my blog and check it by Monday, I will have an article out there on my blog that will give you some links for both crowdsourcing and security testing as well. And some people that you can follow. So some great people in security testing. I will get their names out there and how you can reach out to them as well.
Ready for the next question?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I got, again, a lot of questions, well, phrased differently, but I'm going just to mash them all up into one question. People are asking, we're doing a certain type of testing, exploratory or API testing or backend testing. How much are we expected to know about other types of testing in our job?
Wow.
Even
So, I was at a conference 2 weeks ago that we hear full stack developers, and we hear the term full stack developer. It's kind of a growing term that people use. And I heard someone use full stack tester. Now, I think that really sums up what a full stack tester would be: someone that understands multiple facets of testing. They're not just someone doing functional testing or regression testing or automation or performance or API testing or service virtualization or any of those, just simple one thing, not simple, but one thing, specific focused, but really looking at multiple areas. And a lot of folks, I have folks working with me right now that they can change their hats. And I think that makes you a well-rounded tester. If you're someone who does hands-on functional testing and you say, I'm not interested in automation, that's okay. I mean, you'd have to check with your organization as far as if it's okay with them. But to me, I don't want to force someone to be in automation if it's not something they're interested in, or someone to be in performance if it's not something they're interested in. And vice versa. If you're in test automation and you want to learn more about hands-on testing or performance testing or API, I think it's good to do that. My suggestion would be, even if you don't feel comfortable doing those other areas, at least become familiar with how they're done and participate in them. It doesn't mean you have to do that work. I've had people say that I don't like that other role. But what I've found is really testers today, the quote unquote full stack testers, are ones that really understand how to do all the roles, and at least whether or not they're actually doing those roles or can really accurately do those roles, they at least understand how it's being done so they can speak to it very maturely. I hope that answered the question.
Me too, and I think the next one is actually an extension or the second part of the question. It's one thing about knowing about different types of testing, or as you call it, full stack tester. I really like that term, and I'm going to start using it actually. So people are asking, how much are we expected to know about tools in the entire testing ecosystem, and how can we learn about the tools in the ecosystem and not just about the stuff that we're using for specifically doing our type of testing?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I think the thing there is you really need to, and it's when it goes back to following people on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you can follow all the people in the testing community, you can learn what other people are doing. And that's where I've learned the most of the things through my 8, 9 years of being out there in the community, is that I've learned so much about what people do with different tools. And I've learned so many new tools by looking at what they're doing. I learned about Selenium by being in the testing community and listening to others. I didn't learn about that in my organization. We brought that to my organization when I learned about it. I learned about JMeter and BlazeMeter and several open source tools for API testing and different tools that are used for test management. You know, if you're in an organization that's using a certain product, and I'll name a few, none of them are favored or not favored, but if you're using Quality Center ALM and you go to a company and now they're using Jira, or you go to another company and they're using Bugzilla, the more well-rounded you can be to speak to those different pieces of software and those different software packages and how they're different and how one is better than the other, the more versatile you are as a tester. I've had folks that sell these products call me, and I can tell them as much about their product than they can tell me, which is always surprising to them. And I can tell them that I know the founders. When you talk about Selenium and Sauce Labs, I know the guy who invented both of those very well and personally. And so I think there's something to be said about staying close knit with the community and understanding what people are doing out there and keeping yourself up to date with the tools. Because even if your company's not allowing you to use those tools, who knows if you start a job tomorrow, a new job, and you need to know those tools. The better you study what's going on and you can speak to that with an educated discussion, the better.
And I think one last question, again, something that repeated itself quite a few times. We talked a lot about test automation, I think, and people are asking, how about manual testing? Is that a dead profession? What is the future, if any, for manual testers?
I've never publicly said what I'm about to say because I've seen it from every angle. I've heard people speak about automation. I've heard people speak about anti-automation. I've heard people talk about automation as checking and it's not really testing. And sometimes that's offensive to people who are in automation. Saying that automation is going to replace the job is offensive to people who are in the quote unquote manual testing. I don't usually use the word manual in testers. I usually try to call it hands-on thinking testers, because I think that a true test, and this is going to be sharing experience of working with people in the community, and I did stop that for a second, but sharing my experiences working with different people, hearing different people talk about this topic, my take, after I've combined all of that into one, and now it's my Mike religion on that, is that it takes a brain to do testing. Now, we have artificial intelligence, we have machine learning, we can have tools that get better and better every day. But at the end of the day, to do some of the things that we do with testing and making some decisions, my thought is you have to have a brain to do that. You can tell a computer what to do, and it can do great things for you. Automation is needed. I have it in my organization, and I've had it in every organization I've been. And I see so much value in automation. It's really critical to have it, especially for doing those things that help you spend more time doing the thinking testing and the quote unquote brain testing out there. So my challenge is to anyone is having that discussion with people, whatever side you're on, is that they're both needed. And I don't see it going away. I see many things happening. Automation could become more supportive to the development team and unit testing. I can see the hands-on testing becoming a different role, but not going completely away. It might be limited, but I don't think you'll ever truly replace a person sitting there making some decisions on some of the applications that we have to test. That's just my opinion.
Well, coming from the industry as executive, Okay, so unfortunately, I wanted to say that's all the time we have for today, but we are way, way, way over time. And I really want to thank everyone that joined us for this live session and stayed over time. And of course, Mike, I really want to thank you for taking the time and putting together this amazing presentation for all of us. I know that people immensely enjoyed it. And of course, as I promised, I will send you all the comments and all the questions after we end the session. I want to remind everyone that the link to the recording will be emailed to you on Monday, and I hope to see you all at our next event.